Hi, I'm Margaret, and the make and bake I've got for you today is a beautifully soft and creamy cake with a lovely caramelised topping. It's my creamy caramelised walnut cake. The first job is to butter and line the cake tins. This is such an easy way to make sure that your cakes come beautifully out of your tins every time. When I started baking many years ago, the cake tins were very different from the ones we use now. The tins I used to use had a piece of flat metal joined onto the middle of the tin with a kind of stud. The thin metal went all across from the middle to the outside of the tin, bent up the tin and also bent around the top. The idea was to move the piece of metal around the tin so that it acted like a knife and released the cake. It often made a terrible mess. I'm so glad we've got better equipment now. Anyway, back to the recipe. We'll need the smallish bowl first to mix the dry ingredients in. These crushed walnuts will give the cake a lovely crunch. Next, we cream the butter and the sugar together. It's best to mix until they're light and creamy. I've reverted to a wooden spoon here. They're easy enough to mix in, and I don't want to use the electric whisk. I might be adding too much air into the mixture. They're easier to mix in one at a time. Once the dry ingredients have been added, the mixture needs to be folded carefully around the edges and through the middle until it's all mixed. Equal amounts in each tin. And the batter needs to be encouraged to line flat. And no peeking halfway. We don't want any dodgy dips. A cake that's sunk in the middle is never a nice experience. They should be left in the tins until completely cold. While they're cooling, let's make the buttercream. I tend to add the icing sugar in thirds. Once it's made, the buttercream needs to be left in the fridge for at least an hour. I tend to leave it overnight and put the cake together the next day. The buttercream just needs to firm up a little bit after all that mixing. It's best to have the baking paper ready before starting the caramel, and also all the ingredients to hand. Have the sugar and water over a medium heat and don't be tempted to stir. Just let it sit and come to a gentle bubble. When it turns a lovely golden brown, it's ready for the walnuts. Pop them in and give them a little mix to make sure they're covered. Pour them carefully onto the baking paper. Remember, this is absolutely scorching hot. You don't want to touch this with your fingers at all. And try and separate them with your spoon or with a pair of tongs. They set quite quickly, so you'll have to get a wriggle on. When you're ready to put the cake together, pop them out of the tins and get everything ready and to hand. I use about 2/3 of the buttercream in the centre of the cake. I start at the middle and work my way out towards the outside, pushing it with the spatula as I go. I tend to move the buttercream right over the edge. It's always nice to see a little bit peeping out from in between the layers. The final third is for the top of the cake. Now I don't go quite so far here. I think it's nice to leave a little edge of cake that you can see. Choose the best walnuts. There's always some that look nicer than the others. Some will need extra bits of caramel breaking off the edges. But if you end up with some left, it's always a good thing, because it's always nice for a nibble later. Well, I'm not going to cut this cake today because I'm making it to give away, but I do want to thank all my subscribers. I've been lucky enough to have 100 followers, and I thank you all for hitting that subscribe button. So, it's time for me to say goodbye. Have a really good week, and I'll catch you soon.